Good day everyone, I am Maylin Montehermoso from Mungabong Cluster. Section 3 is Cell 6 and this is my video presentation for the subject of Teaching and Assessment for Literature Studies. Today, I will be discussing our lesson design for teaching poetry using EFDT format. EFDT stands for Explore, Firm Up, Defend, and Transfer. This format is used to scaffold learning, guiding students from basic exposure to actual performance and application. The lesson is aligned with the Matatag curriculum and emphasizes poetry as a powerful form of literary expression. But before we proceed to the EFDT format lesson plan, I will discuss first the objectives of my report. And here are the objectives. Number 1, explain how to structure a lesson plan for poetry using EFDT. Number 2, appreciate the value of poetry in student development. And number 3, create and present a DLP with matching IMs. Lesson design in teaching poetry. Introduction. Poetry as a literary form fosters emotional expression, creativity, and critical thinking in students. However, its abstract nature often poses challenges for learners and educators alike. Effective teaching of poetry requires not only well-structured lesson design but also the strategic use of materials and resources that enhance engagement and comprehension. This report explores various materials and instructional resources that support poetry instruction, emphasizing their significance in tertiary level education. Effective poetry instruction begins with a well-structured lesson design that balance content, creativity, and student engagement. The lesson plan serves as the blueprint for guiding learners through the appreciation and interpretation and creation of poetry. Here are the key components of lesson design. Number 1, learning objective. It contains cognitive, affective, and psychomotor. Number 2, motivation and engagement. Number 3, content delivery. It contains age appropriate, culturally relevant. Number 4, learning activities. Contain analysis, collaboration, and creation. And number 5, assessment and feedback, formative and summative. Number 6, reflection. Number 1, key components of lesson design. Learning objectives. Clearly defined goals should align with the curriculum standard and student needs. Objectives may include understanding poetic devices, interpreting themes, analyzing structure, and writing original poems. Key components of lesson design. Number 2, motivation and engagement. Teachers may use short videos, spoken words, performances, or relevant quotes to hook student interest. Introducing contemporary or culturally resonant poems help bridge traditional poetry with student realities. Number 3, content delivery. Introduction to poetry elements such as metaphor, simile, rhyme, meter, and imagery. Genre and form exploration, lyrics, narrative, haiku, sonnet, pre-verse, etc. In contextual analysis, historical, cultural, and biographical background of the poet or poem. And collaborative reading and interpretation, pair group discussion, guided reading, and close textual analysis. Number 4, learning objectives. Annotating poems, group performances or choral readings, poetry writing workshop, creative reinterpretation, example, turning poem into short skirts. Number 5, assessment and feedback. It contains formative and summative. Informative contains observation, fear, feedback, and journals. And Number 6, encourage students to reflect on their learning journey and how their perception of poetry has evolved. Now, let's proceed to second topic. Materials and resources in teaching poetry. Selecting the right materials and resources is crucial for enriching the poetry learning experience. These tools help deepen understanding, foster creativity, and support diverse learning needs. Here are the instructional materials that can be used in teaching poetry. A. Print-based resources. Anthologies. It is classic and contemporary collection that expose students to various poets, cultures, and themes. Number 2 is textbook with guided reading, question, activities, and scaffolding tool. And 3, poet biographies to humanize poets and contextualize their works. B. Digital and multimedia resources. It contains online poetry archives, example, Poetry Foundation, Poets Original. Number 2, video platforms, YouTube, TED-Ed, Button Poetry, for performance poetry, and educational apps, tools like Poetry Creator, Versify, or even Padlet for collaborative writing, and LMS integration, Google Classroom, Moodle, or Schoology for assignment and resources sharing. Letter C. Local and indigenous poetry. Encourage use of regional language and cultural embedded poetry. Example, spoken word in Filipino, balagtasan, or tribal chant to promote inclusivity and national identity. Letter D. Visual and performing arts integration. Use of illustration, calligraphy, and dramatization, and even music to interpret poems creatively. Letter E. Teacher-created materials. Custom worksheet, interactive poetry journals, rubrics tailored for creative writing or interpretation tasks. And that's all the learning materials that help teaching poetry. And here my question. Is the same learning materials applicable to different sonnet? Yes. The same instructional material is absolutely applicable to different sonnet as long as the learning objectives, poetic elements, and analysis skills align. This approach promotes consistency, deeper understanding, and skill transfer among students. Why it works? Number 1, sonnet shared common features. Most sonnet, like Shakespearean and Petrarchan, follow structured form with 14 lines, specific rhyme schemes, and thematic elements like love, time, beauty, and morality. Number 2, instructional material focus on universal skills, analyzing tone, theme, figurative language, and poetic devices work across all sonnet. Tools like graphic organizer, annotating guides, performance rubrics, or discussion prompt are flexible and reusable. Here the example of 2 different sonnet that can be used in the same instructional materials. Example, poetry analysis, graphic organizing. Learning material, a worksheet with section for themes, tone, figurative language, structures. Personal interpretation, applicable to Shall I Compare Thee to the Summer Days by William Shakespeare, and How Do I Love Thee by Elizabeth Barrett Browning. Here another example, Venn diagram activity. Learning materials, a simple Venn diagram templates, applicable to William Shakespeare Sonnet 18 and Langston Hughes Harlem. It is comparison and contrast of the 2 sonnets. Here another example, performance rubrics, used for any sonnet selected for dramatic reading or recitation. Criteria, voice modulation, expression, understanding of meaning, and pacing. How to know if an online source is legit? Indicators of legitimate sources. Author identified, credible background or expert in literature. Institutional affiliation. Connected to universities, publishing houses, or literacy institutions. With domain extension like educational.edu or government.gov or well-known organization.org.com with authority. Here are the examples of legitimate online sources. Number 1, www.poetryfoundation.org. It's offer credible poems, biographies, and analysis. Number 2, www.poets.org. It is Academy of American Poets. It's reliable poems and teaching materials. Number 3, www.britannica.com. It is literature terms and biographies. Number 4, Google Scholar or https://scholar.google.com. It is academic, article, and literary research. And number 5, YouTube educational channel. Example, TED-Ed, BBC Learning, Button Poetry for performances. Now we will apply the lesson design and learning materials for teaching poetry to the EFDT format lesson plan. Here the lesson plan in English. The upper part contains the name of teacher, date and time, grade and quarter, and the content standard. The learner demonstrates understanding of poetry as literary form that express ideas in emotion and creative and imaginative ways. The performance standard. The learner is available to analyze, interpret, and create poems using the element and techniques of the content standard and performance standard. It is included in the curriculum guide. You can get that in curriculum guide. The learning competency or objective, it also in curriculum guide. Now, the content of objective is in 3 category: cognitive, affective, and psychomotor. The content is, at the end of this lesson, the students are expected to, the cognitive, identify the elements and literary devices used in poem, example, imagery, rhyme, meter, and metaphor. And affective, express appreciation for the emotional and artistic value of poetry. And in the psychomotor, write and present a short original poem using learned elements and devices. Next, the subject matter. It contains topics, understanding in writing poems, focus on element and emotion and praise. It includes, in subject matter, includes the references. It contains K-12 curriculum or matatag curriculum, English for academic and professional purposes textbook, Poetry Foundation, www.poetryfoundation.org, and sample poem, Life by Sarah Teddale or any Filipino poem. Material that used in this lesson plan: printed copy of selected poem, Manila paper and markers, multimedia presentation, video clips or slide deck, rubrics for poetry writing. Next, the procedure: prayer, greetings, energizer, checking of attendance, and checking of assignment. Now proceed the letter A, reviewing the previous lesson or presenting the new lesson. It's called recall or explore. Activity title: paint the poem. Teacher present a visual image and ask if this were a poem, what would it say? Class read a selected short poem either in English or Filipino. Teacher guide students in identifying poetic elements, example, metaphor, personification, mood. Student discuss what is the message or emotion of this poem. Instructional materials that used in in the activity, PowerPoint slide with poem, picture or visual prompt, and guide question. Next, letter B, making connection between the lesson to the given activities. Firm up. Activity 1, element hat. Student work in pair to highlight a literary device in the poem. Each pair present their analysis. In activity 2, emotion spectrum. Student map the poem's emotional journey, the beginning, climax, and end. Class discussion on how poetic techniques shape emotion. The instructional material that used in this activity are printed poem copies, colored highlighter, emotion spectrum handout. Next, the defend or B, consolidating idea and facilitating student construction of a new concept and meaning. Activity 1, poetry puzzle. Jumbled stanza are given to the group. They must reconstruct the poem based on the meaning and tone. Group explain the reasoning and interpretation. And proceed to activity 2, poet chair. Students are given a prompt. Example, describe sadness without using the word sad. They write 4 lines original verse using at least one literary device. The instructional material that used in this activity: cut up poems stanza, writing paper and pens, evaluation guide sheet. Now, we'll proceed to transfer. A challenging student to extend problem. Performance task. Poetry showcase. Student write an original 4 to 8 lines poem based on the personal experience. They will read all, perform it in front of the class. Here the rubrics that used in the activity: content, clarity of message, use of poetic devices, creative and originally, presentation or performance. The instructional materials that used in this activity: rubrics handout, performance checklist, background music optional. Now, we'll proceed to generalization, class reflection. How does poetry help us express our thoughts and emotion? Summary of elements of poetry. Discussion of how poetry connects language, feeling, and imagination. Now, the last part of our lesson plan, assignment. Assignment, write a short poem, 6 to 8 lines or any of the following themes: hope, nature, love, or dreams. Use at least 2 poetic devices discussed in class. Prepare for peer sharing next session. In conclusion, in teaching poetry, a strong lesson design provides structure and direction, while varied materials and resources enrich the content and engagement. Combining traditional and digital tools empower students to experience poetry not just an literary form but as a meaningful, emotional, and expressive art. A single well-designed instructional materials can guide students through the analysis or performance of multiple sonnets, enhancing both comparative thinking and literary appreciation. And the holistic approach, balancing cognitive, affective, and creative domain, ensure that poetry becomes accessible, enjoyable, and transformative for learners. Using one learning materials across multiple poems not only save times but help students build analytical consistency by choosing the right tools and verifying credible sources. Teachers create an engaging and well-supported learning experience in poetry education. That's all my report. Thank you.